This point that the jury will be told exactly who will testify and what evidence may be presented. The entire trial is expected to last 2.5, maybe even 3 months.
It was a regular Tuesday afternoon. School had just ended and the bell rang and children filled the sidewalks, laughing and talking on their way home. But one 8-year-old girl wearing a purple Hannah Montana hoodie didn't show up where she usually did. Her backpack, decorated with her favorite Bratz characters, was found nearby, but she wasn't there. What happened in those quiet moments left a community with more questions than answers, and a family still waiting for one more smile, one more hug, because sometimes even the safest places are where the real mystery begins. Victoria Elizabeth Marie Stafford, known to her family and friends as Tori, came into the world on July 15, 2000, in the quiet town of Woodstock, Ontario. Her parents, Tara MacDonald and Rodney Stafford, welcomed a daughter full of energy and warmth. Tori had a kind spirit and a lively personality, and her natural friendliness made her easy to love. Her favorite things reflected her cheerful and imaginative nature. Bratz dolls lined her shelves, and she often sang along to Hannah Montana songs like she was on stage herself. Classic Disney stories captured her heart, and Halloween was basically her version of a national holiday. She shared a close bond with her brother Darren, often acting as both his partner in crime and biggest fan. Though life for Tori was filled with the simple joys of childhood, the world she trusted didn't quite return the favor. There's a certain cruel irony in how someone so full of life could be taken from it so suddenly. A reminder that innocence, no matter how brightly it shines, sometimes meets the darkest corners of human nature. When Tori was just 2 years old, her family life shifted. Her parents went their separate ways, and she, along with her brother Darren, came to live full-time with their mother and grandmother. Life settled into a new routine, and like many kids their age, the siblings adjusted and found comfort in the familiar rhythm of home and school. But before we begin, I just want to say thank you to my amazing viewers and subscribers. Your support through likes, shares, and comments means the world to me. Your engagement helps make these stories even more meaningful. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. On the afternoon of Wednesday, April 8, 2009, 8-year-old Tori left Oliver Stevens Public School on her own. She usually walked with Darren, but that day held a minor hiccup. She'd forgotten her butterfly earrings in the classroom. Wanting to retrieve them, she darted back inside. Darren, thinking nothing of it, decided to head home with some classmates instead. Tori left the school a few minutes later, just 5, maybe less. It was such a small delay, barely enough time to lose your place in a line. But somehow, in that narrow window, fate intervened. The walk she'd done many times before would be the one she wouldn't finish, and the earrings she went back for? Not exactly worth the trade, in hindsight. When Darren made it back home around 3:45 p.m. and noticed that his sister hadn't returned yet, he didn't wait around. He grabbed his bike and set off to check the usual places, expecting to find her along the way. But after coming up empty, he let his mother and grandmother know. By 4:30, they were out searching too, hoping she was just taking her time or had gotten distracted by something harmless, like an ice cream truck or a neighborhood dog. With still no sign of her, Tara started calling around to Tori's friends, thinking maybe someone had seen her or invited her over after school. But no one had any answers. Rodney was contacted as well, and like everyone else, he was just as confused. Finally, at 6:04 p.m., Tori's grandmother, Linda Winters, reported her missing to the police, and the search officially got underway. Although no Amber Alert was issued, officials stated they didn't yet have the necessary criteria to trigger one. It wasn't for lack of concern. Authorities assured the family and community that every effort was being made to find her. Before long, volunteers joined the cause, combing through the neighborhood and handing out flyers with her photo. It seemed like everyone in town was on board, which makes it all the more ironic that the system designed for exactly this kind of emergency got stuck in paperwork. Tori was reported to be 4 feet 5 inches tall and weighed about 62 pounds. On the day she disappeared, she had been dressed in a black Hannah Montana jacket with a fur-lined hood layered over a green top, paired with a denim skirt and black and white footwear. She also had a purple and pink Bratz bag with her, fitting for a girl who adored her favorite characters. As a routine part of the investigation, her father Rodney's residence was searched, but after a short inquiry, he was ruled out as being connected in any way.
It wasn't long before a nearby surveillance camera became a key piece of the puzzle. Footage from outside the school offered a new lead. It showed Tori walking hand in hand with a woman heading north on Fife Avenue, passing the high school. The timestamp read 3:32 p.m. The pair continued until they reached the parking lot of a retirement home, at which point the camera lost track of them, vanishing from view as simply as a scene change in a movie no one asked to watch. Investigators gave a general description of the unknown woman in the video. She appeared to be between 19 and 25 years old, roughly 5 feet 2 inches tall, and estimated to weigh around 120 to 125 pounds. She wore form-fitting black jeans and a white puffy jacket, with her dark hair pulled back into a ponytail. The image was clear enough to give police a direction, but not, unfortunately, a destination. Investigators wasted no time turning their attention to the unidentified woman seen in the surveillance footage. In the days that followed, tips began to pour in, some possibly useful, others likely the result of wishful thinking, but none that led to Tori. Despite the growing number of leads, the little girl remained missing. Her father admitted he didn't recognize the woman seen walking with his daughter, but he took small comfort in the fact that Tori hadn't appeared distressed in the video. It wasn't much, but it was something. Authorities also maintained cautious optimism. Since there was no sign of a struggle and none of Tori's belongings had been found, they continued to hope she was safe and simply out of reach. What followed was one of the most expansive search efforts Ontario had ever seen. A Facebook group called Finding Victoria Stafford was created and quickly gained traction. By April 11th, just a few days in, the group had already grown to 10,000 members, a number that says a lot about how many people cared and maybe a little about how fast people join Facebook groups. Tori's disappearance drew attention far beyond her hometown. On April 15th, the case was featured on America's Most Wanted, adding an international spotlight to the ongoing search. Meanwhile, back in Woodstock, a candlelight vigil was held on April 12th. Hundreds of people gathered in support of the family, lighting candles and holding hope. During the event, Tori's mother, Tara, made a heartfelt plea for her daughter to reach out if she could, a moment that underscored the very human heartbreak behind every headline. 6 days after Tori was first reported missing, the physical search on foot was officially called off on April 13th. Despite the exhaustive effort, no concrete evidence had surfaced. Still, one officer expressed confidence that the young girl was alive, offering a sliver of hope amid the growing uncertainty. In situations like this, hope is sometimes the only thing keeping the wheels turning. At this point, public attention began to shift toward Tori's mother, Tara, who many felt wasn't behaving how a distraught parent should. For one, it wasn't Tara who had contacted police, it was Tori's grandmother, and that wasn't until a few hours had already passed. Tara's lack of visible emotion during interviews didn't help ease suspicion, and her history with substance use became a point of scrutiny. Tara later explained the delay by saying she had been under the influence of a strong prescription medication at the time. She believed that Tori may have simply gotten lost and didn't want to cause unnecessary panic. Still, her vague explanation did little to quiet the growing doubts. Her resemblance to the woman seen in the security footage didn't help matters either. And when she walked out of a scheduled polygraph session with investigators, it only fueled more speculation. At that point, even her silences were starting to look suspicious. During interviews with investigators, Tara floated the idea that Tori's disappearance might have been tied to an unpaid substance-related dispute. According to her, her boyfriend had recently shorted a local dealer by $600, and she speculated that the incident may have triggered some form of retaliation. Another rumor making the rounds suggested a much larger debt, around $33,000, might have been involved, though no solid evidence ever surfaced to back that up. One of Tara's close friends also came forward, noting that Tara had always been someone who wore her emotions on her sleeve. Given that, she said she expected a situation like this to completely devastate her. Instead, what she witnessed was unexpected. Tara appeared detached and was even seen laughing at times. Understandably, that didn't sit well with those watching from the sidelines.
Tensions within the family also began to rise. Tori's grandmother, Linda, claimed that Tara had specifically told her not to pick Tori up from school that afternoon. Tara, for her part, said it was due to strained trust between the two. In a twist of circular finger-pointing, Tara then hinted that maybe Linda had played a role in the disappearance. Linda, meanwhile, firmly believed her daughter was somehow involved and went as far as to tell police she thought Tara was the woman caught on camera with Tori. At that point, the investigation was starting to feel less like a mystery and more like an awkward family reunion with a missing guest. Police even tried a more subtle approach by sending in 2 undercover officers to befriend the mother, hoping she might open up. But that strategy didn't yield any progress. Around the same period, Tara chose to speak publicly. She acknowledged that she had struggled with the past, admitting she used it a few times a week, but she emphasized that she'd been attending a treatment clinic for the past 2 years, determined to take back control of her life. She firmly denied any claims that her daughter's disappearance had anything to do with old habits or unpaid debts. Tara even pointed investigators towards someone she suspected, a woman named Terri-Lynne McClintock, who, she said, looked a lot like the person caught in the video footage. Tara recalled visiting her twice in early 2009, once to discuss breeding their dogs and another time for a reason she wasn't exactly proud of, involving Terry's mother. Authorities managed to arrest Terri-Lynne on an unrelated charge and brought her in for questioning. She denied being the person in the video and said she had been at the employment office on the day Tori went missing, a place that, as luck would have it, was right near the school. Still, she insisted she'd never gone near it. A curious coincidence, or just a very unfortunate overlap in timing? Around that same period, investigators decided to officially reclassify Tori's case. What was once treated as a missing person report was now being handled as an abduction. Shortly after, a composite sketch of the woman seen in the video footage was released to the public. Tori's father, Rodney, believed the image looked familiar. Tara, on the other hand, said she didn't recognize the woman at all. A few days later, investigators shared surveillance footage showing a dark-colored car traveling along the same road where Tori had last been seen. The vehicle was later identified as a dark blue 2003 Honda Civic with some panels that appeared to be covered in black spray paint, an oddly specific detail for a car that was trying not to stand out. As the days stretched on with no news, the community continued to hope. On May 18, 2009, Tori's family and supporters joined the Victoria Day Parade in Woodstock, using the event to keep her name and face in the public eye. Then, just a few days after that show of unity, 18-year-old Terri-Lynne was brought in for more questioning, and this time everything changed. She finally admitted that she was the woman seen in the video. More than that, she confessed to helping her boyfriend, 28-year-old Michael Rafferty, carry out the. According to her, he later took things even further and ended Tori's life. Terri-Lynne was charged with abduction and for knowingly helping him. Michael was also arrested and charged with both abduction and a serious offense connected to Tori's passing, a tragic truth that had been hiding in plain sight. Not long after, investigators made a public request for help locating a specific part of Michael's car, the back seat, which was notably missing. Authorities believed it could hold crucial evidence and potentially clarify unanswered questions. At just 18 years old, Terri-Lynne McClintock had already lived a life marked by instability. She had been placed in the care of a family friend not long after birth. Early reports painted a picture of a troubled childhood, with serious behavioral concerns emerging even before she started school. By age 10, Terri-Lynne had already come into contact with law enforcement following a minor shoplifting incident. Over time, her behavior became more erratic and troubling, Even in her early years, she displayed signs of aggression that left people concerned and sometimes alarmed. As she entered her teen years, her home life continued to spiral. There was even an incident where her adoptive mother, under the influence, was seen chasing her down the street, a moment that eventually led to her placement in foster care. Throughout her adolescence, she cycled through multiple group homes and youth facilities. During that time, she accumulated a series of charges, one involving a sharp object and poor impulse control, which is not the ideal combination at any age. In 2008, Terri-Lynne and her adoptive mother moved into a rundown house in Woodstock. A year later, she crossed paths with Michael at a local pizza shop. The two struck up a conversation while waiting for their orders. Michael complimented her and offered her a lift home, which she accepted.
During that drive, they bonded over shared experiences, including a history with substance use. At some point, their connection turned physical, and Michael reportedly displayed controlling behavior during that encounter. Still, he dropped her off, and from there, a relationship began. According to Terri-Lynne, her feelings developed quickly, but Michael wasn't exactly hiding his darker tendencies. Around that time, he was sharing a home and a computer with another woman. Digital activity linked to him included visits to service sites and downloads that raised serious concerns, particularly regarding unlawful content. Terri-Lynne later admitted that she was aware of some of Michael's behavior, but had chosen to look the other way. In her words, she felt lucky to finally have someone in her life who seemed to care. She even recalled the two of them making unsettling comments during drives near schools, remarks that, in hindsight, revealed far more than either of them might have intended at the time. Following her statement to investigators, Terri-Lynne tried to lead them to the place where she believed Tori had been left. However, she couldn't recall the exact location, which left the search at a standstill. Then on July 19th, a detective conducted an independent search just east of Mount Forest, Ontario, based on data that showed Michael's phone had connected to a tower in that area on the evening of April 8th. As he drove through the region, something caught his attention, on a house that closely resembled the one Terri-Lynne had previously described. Nearby, he noticed a cluster of rocks. When he approached, he found what he feared: remains. The remains were later confirmed to be those of 8-year-old Tori Stafford. She was found partially clothed, wearing a Hannah Montana shirt and a pair of butterfly earrings. The medical report determined that Tori had suffered significant harm, with evidence pointing to a strong impact as the primary cause. Additional findings reflected the seriousness of what she had been through. It was a heartbreaking conclusion to a life that had only just begun, and a case that showed the disturbing lengths some will go to in order to hide the truth. In April 2010, several months after her arrest, Terri-Lynne entered a guilty plea to a serious criminal charge. She also expressed remorse to Tori's family in court. As a result of her plea, she received a life sentence with no eligibility for release for 25 years. 2 years later, in March 2012, Michael's trial officially began. He faced multiple charges. Terri-Lynne was called as the prosecution's main witness. She testified in court, offering her account of the events that had taken place on that April day. According to her statement, the morning began with a visit to a government office not far from the school Tori attended. Earlier that day, Terri-Lynne had reportedly taken something to manage her depression. She later returned home, where Michael arrived not long after. The pair went out for a drive, and during that time, he expressed a deeply disturbing plan involving. What's chilling is that their relationship had only existed for a few months at that point, but still, Terri-Lynne agreed. The two then parked near the school and waited. Michael, apparently questioning her willingness to follow through, dared her to approach a child, strike up a friendly conversation, perhaps about pets or sweets. It was a moment where everything should have stopped, and yet somehow it didn't. They parked near a retirement facility, located just a short distance from the school. Terri-Lynne stepped out and began walking down the sidewalk. She later claimed her original intent was only to appear as though she was looking for someone, without ever actually approaching a. But with Michael slowly trailing behind in the car, watching, the pressure to follow through mounted. Eventually, she decided to walk beside one of the children. Just walk, nothing more. That's when she noticed Tori stepping out of the school, a few steps behind a group of other girls. Something about her being slightly apart from the group seemed to influence Terri-Lynne's decision. She chose that moment to act. Starting a conversation, Terri-Lynne brought up dogs, mentioning she had a small one in the car, coincidentally the same breed Tori had at home. When she asked if Tori wanted to come see it, the little girl said yes. Terri-Lynne then walked her toward the car, and once they were close enough, led her inside.
Tori was placed on the floor of the back seat beneath a dark coat. As they drove, she asked questions, mainly about where they were going. The answers were vague and dismissive, simply that they were taking a short drive. Terri-Lynne, who was 18 at the time, insisted she didn't know what Michael really had in mind. She claimed the reality of the situation only began to set in once they were on the highway, leaving town. It was during that drive that Michael made a statement, one that hinted at intentions far worse than anything she'd anticipated. "We can't keep her, and we can't take her back." Words that, in hindsight, carried the weight of decisions already made. Following their departure from Woodstock, the pair made a series of stops. First, they pulled into a Tim Hortons drive-thru, while Tori remained hidden in the back of the car. The next stop was a hardware store, where Michael asked Terri-Lynne to go inside and purchase a few specific items. Their final errand was to obtain more pills, another decision that reflected just how far off course the day had already gone. As they continued driving, Terri-Lynne tried to make conversation with the child. She asked about her favorite shows, what she liked to do for fun, and what color she liked best. She even offered calming words, telling Tori that everything would be okay and that they'd be heading back home soon. Words, unfortunately, that were never meant to be true. Eventually, they turned onto a remote dirt road, leading into an open field. Along the way, Michael began displaying behavior that hinted at where things were headed. Once the car came to a stop, he climbed into the back seat. At that moment, Tori became visibly distressed, and rather than intervene, Terri-Lynne stepped away, choosing not to see what she already sensed was happening. After a while, Tori quietly said she needed to use the bathroom, prompting Terri-Lynne to return to the car. It was during this brief interaction that the young girl looked at her and said, "Just don't let him do it again." Terri-Lynne noticed the snow around them had been marked, and she tried to offer comfort, telling her she was strong and brave. Then, despite everything, she brought her right back to Michael. Tori reached out, still holding Terri-Lynne's hand, pleading her not to leave. Terri-Lynne got into the front seat but continued to hold her hand for a moment. Eventually, she said she couldn't stay, because she already knew what was coming. She stepped out of the vehicle again, leaving Tori behind. From where she stood, she could hear the a sound she later claimed would haunt her in flashbacks, a delayed conscience in a moment that demanded immediate courage. Once Michael was done in the back seat, he forced Tori out of the vehicle. Terri-Lynne claimed that, in that moment, what she saw wasn't the but a reflection of her own damaged past. Decades of pain, anger, and confusion came rushing forward, and instead of turning inward, she let it out in the worst way possible. She said her emotions got the best of her, leading her to act out in a destructive way. The child was then covered and placed near a tree beneath a pile of rocks, left behind in a quiet rural clearing that didn't match the darkness of what had just unfolded there. Afterward, Michael made a point of cleaning up. Using bottled water and Terri-Lynne's jacket, so he wouldn't ruin his own clothes, he wiped himself off. The two of them also made a few half-hearted efforts to hide any trace they'd been there, including the car tracks in the dirt. Then they simply drove away. On the road back to town, Terri-Lynne was told to throw her shoes out the window, and she did. A stranger later stumbled across them. At one point, she also cut pieces out of the car's back seat and tossed those, too. Before returning home, they made a stop at a car wash, carefully wiping down both the outside and inside of the vehicle. Oddly, something about what had happened seemed to solidify their relationship. Before this, they weren't exactly using labels. But afterward, Terri-Lynne began referring to Michael as her boyfriend, as if shared trauma somehow counted as commitment. They stayed in regular contact. Michael even went to visit her twice at the detention center while she was being held on unrelated charges. During one of those visits, he leaned in and asked her a question that said more than he probably intended. What would happen if someone figured out she was the woman in the video seen walking away with the little girl?
Terri-Lynne later said that she had offered to take full responsibility for what had happened. Her reasoning? She felt Michael had more at stake. "I told him I'd take the blame," she recalled. "It's fine. I'm just an 18-year-old who's going to believe me anyway." During what would be their final visit on May 12, 2009, Terri-Lynne said Michael said something that stuck with her. With what she described as a smirk, he looked at her and said, "You'll do anything for a little love, won't you?" A bitter truth wrapped in mockery. Shortly after that visit, Michael ended all contact with her. That silence, perhaps louder than anything else, appeared to be what finally pushed Terri-Lynne to speak with authorities. She then began telling investigators everything she knew about what had happened to Tori. When Michael eventually stood trial, certain key pieces of information never reached the jury. For instance, they were not made aware that explicit content involved had been found on Michael's computer. The reason? It had been accessed without a valid search warrant and was deemed inadmissible. During the trial, Michael's defense team worked hard to shift the narrative. They claimed that Terri-Lynne was the one who orchestrated everything and that Michael had simply been along for the ride. They said she owed money to dangerous individuals, and in a twisted attempt to settle her debt, she had taken Tori and tried to offer her to Michael, who, according to them, turned her down. That version of events didn't hold up in court, and frankly, no one really expected it to. In the end, Michael Rafferty was convicted on all charges. He was given a life sentence with no possibility of parole for the next 25 years. When he later filed for an appeal in mid-2012, the request was firmly denied. During sentencing, Tori's older brother Darren took the stand and delivered a deeply emotional impact statement. He spoke about how her absence had left a permanent void in his world. "She wasn't just my sister," he said. "She was the only one who really got me. When I was sad, she felt it too. When I laughed, she did too." He explained that her sudden loss didn't just take away a loved one, it took away his closest friend. Now, he said, all that's left are memories and an ache he didn't ask for. Outside the courthouse, Tori's father, Rodney, read a statement aloud. His words reflected the ongoing heartache of a father still reeling from unimaginable loss. He didn't sugarcoat anything. During the courtroom statement, he even deviated from his prepared remarks, letting a raw and unfiltered moment slip through as he directed a scathing comment at Rafferty. Tori's mother, Tara McDonald, spoke with affection and heartbreak as she remembered her daughter. She described her not by what had happened to her, but by the light she brought into the world. With her playful personality, her love for animals, and a grin that could brighten a room, Tori was one of a kind. "Please," she asked, "don't focus on how her story ended. Think about who she was, full of energy, full of love, and absolutely unforgettable." As family members addressed the court with their victim impact statements, Rafferty maintained a calm and unreadable demeanor. Yet when Darren, Tori's brother, delivered his heartfelt message, Rafferty briefly showed emotion, brushing away a tear. Darren hadn't shared his speech in advance, but his words resonated with everyone in the room, echoing the collective sorrow that had brought them all there. What came next caught everyone off guard. Rafferty stood and asked to meet privately with Tori's mother, saying he could provide answers that had been missing. The request was immediately declined. Some saw it as a final attempt to maintain control, a tactic not unfamiliar in these kinds of cases, where the illusion of power often lingers long after accountability is established. Though he offered an apology, Rafferty insisted he wasn't guilty of the charges. The judge, Justice Heaney, delivered his verdict with firm conviction. He said the nature of the crime was deeply inhumane and told Rafferty he had demonstrated the traits of someone truly devoid of empathy. Meanwhile, Terri-Lynne's time in custody continued to raise eyebrows. After an incident involving another inmate, her prison placement changed in 2018. She was relocated to a facility in Saskatchewan, known for its focus on spiritual and emotional healing. The move was granted based on her claim of Indigenous heritage, though this claim was never confirmed and at least one relative openly disputed it. This new facility operated under far different conditions than a standard prison. Its emphasis was on recovery through cultural programs like visual arts, music, and interactions with animals. The center also allowed for mother-child bonding, which caused concern given the nature of her conviction. The lack of fencing only deepened public unease. The reaction from the community was quick and strong. Many voiced their objections, with protests taking place across the province. Tori's father even led one of them himself. The criticism reached policymakers, and new regulations were introduced that made it more difficult for serious offenders to access such programs. As a result, Terri-Lynne was returned to a more secure correctional institution. Later that year, a large memorial was held in honor of Tori Stafford. Friends, family, and members of the community came together in Woodstock to remember her bright and joyful spirit. During the service, Tori's mother reflected on the irreplaceable light her daughter had brought into their lives, describing her as someone whose enthusiasm left a lasting impact. Tori's positivity wasn't just felt, it was infectious. Her family chose to honor that spirit through an annual cycling event that raises money for Child Find Ontario, an organization that supports efforts to locate missing children. The event has become a meaningful way to ensure her memory helps others. On July 15, 2009, Tori was laid to rest during a private funeral service. She was buried in Oxford Memorial Park, a peaceful resting place in her hometown. Though gone, her story continues to motivate others to support child protection initiatives and community outreach programs that aim to prevent similar tragedies. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more true crime cases that deserve to be remembered. And don't forget to like and share, because awareness is the first step toward change.